So thanks everyone for coming. I'm Leo. I'm with the PhD sitting here at Bren. And I'm going to be talking today about my second chapter, which is titled Drivers of Serious Exploitation of the Sheer Supply of Biological Products. It's again a mouthful, but let's carry on. So when you think of luxury goods, essentially what you're talking about is something that is in very high demand and has a very low supply. But when you talk about fashion, for example, Prada is probably one of the first things that comes to my mind when you talk about luxury and objects. The key thing that people enjoy about Prada bags, I don't have one, but it is that the luxury aspect of this product makes you feel like you are essentially better than somebody else that doesn't have them. Because that separates you from everybody else. But that also makes everybody want to have the luxury products. And because of the prices, not everybody can. It then leads to fading bags, for example, and then that leads into the substitute. We can have either cheaper product bags, which are usually smaller, or we can have the straight outfit. So people want to really consume luxury, and as well increases, we expect the luxury consumption to also increase. But enough of the fashion. Let's get into it. So people actually enjoy also to eat fancy food. Usually, the best example of this is caviar. So here, what you see on the right is the Soviet caviar. This is the main type of caviar used in the most expensive one. But then because also more people want to consume this. There's not enough caviar for everybody. So the industry has to come up with substitutes. And with the substitutes in this case, we have, for example, salmon eggs, it's also called broth. So we have added another species there. And we also see ads like this, where this particular company is advertising both box content. But all what I want to say is this pattern leads to the expansion of the trade for multiple species, which then requires expansion of multiple. This is a thing now by more focus on luxury seafood. There's a seafood number trade to Hong Kong. So Hong Kong is about sourcing all of these products from all over the world. And as time goes on, we add more and more countries. But pay attention to the weight. There's not enough. The weight does not change that much. This means that the stocks of chicken companies around the world are plentiful, and they need to find other ways to harvest. So this is what across series A. For shark fins, more specifically, which is going to be the topic for today, they are also a high demand luxury seafood in Southeast Asia. They are often sold like this in Hong Kong on the streets, but they are also found in wholesale markets for the small things. And we have over 130 species of sharks and also some rays exploited of the straight. And 1 kilogram of fin could end up being worth around $1,700, which is what. And the main dish used with this ingredient is a shark fin soup, which I think most of you have heard about. This is also a lot of fancy food usually consumed in traditional Chinese banquets, usually in weddings when you want to show off as having enough money to support a lot. So my research questions are: what are the main drivers of serious liquidity for a lot of luxury biological products? And which species will likely come in trade and where will they come? So I have 4 main working hypotheses. First one is that geographic distance plays a role in this. So the importing country will first derive or source some products from those supply countries and slowly expand to further away. The second one is that the importing country will outsource their products from countries with stronger trade ties in the beginning and then move on to lower and lower trade countries. The third one is the social balance imbalances, where basically the importing country will target countries with poor rule of law first, and then move on to the bigger and bigger rule of law. And because there is a desirable trait in the species, we have to account for that as well. So this the last hypothesis is that there is an evolutionary relatedness into this that played a role because the species currently trait, the traits that are inherent are probably evolutionarily related to the mutants. So the country will first pirate some species A instead of going to species C, which had a much lower, much smaller fin. It'll choose me with intermediate. To do this, I do three main modeling exercises. First one, I do a opposite regression model to test all of the hypotheses as the data changes over time. The second one, I have to try to predict which species will come to the trade next, and that are not in trade so far. So for that, I use methodology regression. And then when I combine the two, I can do the predictions on which species and countries will come into the trade. And so for the response variable, I'm using the year I get beneficiaries for the species was begun, and I get country. And for that, I use text data from the FAO and CROs. And then I have country-specific predictors. So I have the geographic distance between the countries, very important with the external country. I have the bilateral trade flow between export and import. This all goes from 1950 to 2019. I also have the rule of law index, the GDP per capita by export, and the fishy fleet size for the exporter country as well. And on the species specific predictor, I have the pectoral fin period, which is just a measure of this angle over here. And that is also the predictor for veterinary research. So a lot of stuff going on. But the results I have so far, these are just a lot of data. This is the year the fishery has begun in each of these countries. As you can see, for example, we have fishery score charts and they started much earlier in time, much later in time than other places in the world. We also see a steady increase in the number of countries, the number of species, not so much species, but the countries for sure, as soon as the last 7 years have been by. And when I run first Fox resulting model, you see that pectoral fin area, the latitude trade, and the little ball index are all significant victors for this. This means that larger things, countries with larger trade, and surprisingly, countries with better rule of law are more likely to be hazardous for the existence of fishing, and more also interestingly, the fleet size has a negative relationship. These are the results of the deployment. This actually predicts 11 new species coming into the trade in the future. Not a lot, but you already have 130. So I think you have, I don't know, 140. There's a lot of species, and a lot of them are actually endangered. And the predictions from the Cox model with the two species list lead to around 306 species when compared coming into the trade in the future. At the price as much harder as the baseline of one. So the next step for this research are to calculate the total fin area for all the charts and use that as a predictor. Analyze this for other countries in data only by China as the important country. I'm going to run the same analysis for Malaysia and Singapore, if you're also the name the two other main countries involved in this. We want to extend the analysis for Fishma, which is that photo on the left, and assess the current future hotspots exploitation for built to CP projects. That's all I have for you guys today. I just want to emphasize this is a very important cultural thing for Chinese descendants. And this is not hating the culture. The culture should remain, and we just actually do a better job of it. Thank you.
Any questions? I encourage you. Oh, thank you.
Hi, Leo. Great talk. I'm just curious what the policy implications of this research would be. You're just like predicting where you should have additional protections on the new species that are being added.
Yeah, I also I ideally think you be able to predict by being able to predict which institutions trade, we can build some insights for they actually become super endangered, which should regulate trade more. Um, that's for
Thank you.
Hi, thanks for it's a great talk. So I'm actually wondering about whether or not you take into account cultural shifts, right? So I'm Malaysian, and I don't think I've had shark fins since what, a decade ago almost. So definitely it feels that there's a shift in cultural beliefs on how we do it in weddings. We use fake meat, or sometimes we even use crab meat, right, as a replacement. So wonder, what would you think of, how do you take into consideration?
yeah, that now both commercial and like one flyer and biomass flyers than shark fins because of the cultural shift. But the issue of the luxury products remain, and a lot of that has been substituted by fish law, the other products I'm going to go into. So people who use shark fins in the weddings now are using fish law. That it's also what's like driving today's thing.
We have time for one last question here.
Thanks so much for an awesome presentation, Leo. I'm curious about like the legality of this trade and whether that poses problems for you in like getting the data that you need, how that gets dealt with.
It depends on from where. Uh, so, for example, some of these spend very little and they get to know they get it with a legality problem. But that definitely plays a role in the availability of data. So I don't have trade data, which would be the ideal kind of data to use for your notes because first, this is not like it's studied back in the day, but it's also the when you predict something, it is sort of getting data that it's way less.
Thank you.